Having Russell Crowe play the Vatican's very real chief exorcist sounds like a recipe for disaster. However, I was pleasantly surprised. Let's get into it. Hello there, Clapperheads, and welcome to a brand new edition of ClapperCorns. I am Nick Dorian. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about Sony Pictures' latest release, The Pope's Exorcist. Now, The Pope's Exorcist essentially tells the story of Father Gabriele Amorth, who was the Vatican's chief exorcist, as he goes to a chapel which holds a very powerful demon and, of course, needs to exorcise the demon from this family that is now living there. While the story itself, of course, may be a bit fabricated and fictionalized, the character himself, Father Gabriele Amorth, is very much a real person who performed thousands of exorcisms in his lifetime. In fact, there was a very interesting documentary called The Devil and Father Amorth that was made by William Friedkin, the director of The Exorcist, which followed the journey of Father Amorth as he delivered his exorcisms. If you can find it somewhere, I would highly recommend it because that definitely tells a little bit more backstory about Father Amorth himself. So when I first heard there was a film being made about his adventures, I was incredibly excited. However, there was a bit of trepidation when I found out that Russell Crowe was going to play Father Amorth, because let's face it, Crowe is very much Australian and Father Amorth is very much Italian, and Hollywood doesn't have the best track record of doing the greatest Italian accents. However, as I said earlier, I was pleasantly surprised because Crowe gave a fantastic performance as the chief exorcist. And what made me respect him even more was the fact that a third of the film, I would say, Crowe actually spoke Italian. Like, there was that decision to get him to speak Italian rather than to speak English through the entire film, which would of course taken us out of it. But moving on to the film and the story itself, it is very interesting in the sense that the first half is played out very much like an old school horror film akin to, of course, The Exorcist, Rosemary's Baby, and maybe The Omen. It was a very old school feel. But then as you move into the second half of the story, it kind of gets ramped up a bit, and by the third act, we really go into some over-the-top territory, which to some might be a little bit jarring, but the way the film is paced, I was like, I'll allow it. Sure, it went to some really all-out places, but the way the film was structured and the tone of the film, it sort of fit, but at the same time, they could have dialed it down a little bit more. Also, what I found unexpected was, yes, this is very much a traditional horror film, but there were quite a number of humor elements added into it through, of course, Father Amorth, who was famous for using humor to dispel the spirits, because apparently demons don't like jokes. And again, that's credit to Crowe himself, because the man knew how to inject a little bit of subtle humor into this that would help lift the film and give it another layer of depth, so it wouldn't be just a whole bunch of horror the whole way through. Now, you may be asking, are there a lot of jump scares? And for me personally, I felt, yes, maybe there were one or two, but it's not to the point of, say, The Conjuring, where it's coming at you all the time and you're yelling in your seats. This was done in a very subtle and honest way. As I mentioned before, this very much is akin to an old school horror in the sense that it taps into the psychological element rather than the jump scare element of it, because we are dealing with demons at the end of the day, and demons are very much more powerful than spirits and don't need to manifest themselves physically in other places. They tap into what's in your head and use your sins and your guilt against you, and that's what makes it so much more powerful. At the end of the day, while The Pope's Exorcist does go a little bit overboard at times, it is still a great example and idea of who Father Amorth was and what he had to go through during these exorcisms, which I'm very sure is going to lead on to more sequels or perhaps a franchise, because I don't think Father Amorth's story is done quite yet. So do yourself a favor, The Pope's Exorcist comes out in Malaysian cinemas on the 6th of April, this coming Thursday. Make sure you go and catch it, but if you're not really a fan of horror, I would say give this a miss, because you might have a bit of nightmares at night, and that's not something that you want. And as always, you can catch us on all social media. It's all on the screen at the moment: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and of course YouTube. Make sure you follow all the social media accounts for more updates. And also not forgetting, I also co-host a podcast with Carol Mbaha and Emilia Chen called Geeks in Malaysia. We talk about everything and anything there is to do about pop culture: movies, TV shows, video games, comic books, and we got a whole bunch of videos coming out as well, so make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel for more updates coming your way soon. And not forgetting, I also write a few articles for the media outlet Goggler. They write some fantastic reviews and articles about film and TV, as well as interview Hollywood's top celebrities, so make sure you check out their social media for more updates. Thank you so much again for watching. I am Nick Dorian, and as always, keep watching the movies.